"Are you here to eat, or to save the place?" Elena didn't bother looking up from the invoice sheet. She knew the answer. No one came to the Gilded Spoon before lunch. No one came at all anymore. "I'm here to cook a man's voice," said calm but not hesitant. Or at least, to try. That made her glance up. He stood just inside the door, backlit by morning light spilling through the frosted glass. Unshaven. Hands weathered like they remembered tools, not tweezers or tongs. His shirt was clean, but old sleeves rolled just above the elbows. He looked like someone who'd walked through 5 kitchens and a few storms just to arrive here, and none of it had defeated him. Just softened him. "You saw the ad?" Elena asked. He nodded once. "You said urgent, with heart, and pay negotiable. I qualify for all 3. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Do you have a resume?" The man reached into a cloth tote and pulled out a tin box, worn, dented in one corner, the kind that might have once held cookies or photographs. Elena raised an eyebrow. "That's not a yes." He opened the lid and slid out a single object, a folded kitchen towel, white with faded red embroidery across the edge. She didn't lean closer, but she saw the words, "Feed with love." "I don't have credentials," he admitted, "but I have a reason." She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You and every failed dreamer with a spatula. Look, I don't need heartwarming. I need full tables. I need the bank to stop calling. I need someone who won't burn the bechamel. Then don't ask me to make bechamel." He smiled, just barely, and placed the tin box on the counter between them. "Let me do one service. Just tonight. If you hate it, I'll mop the floors for free. If you like it, we talk about what comes next." Something in his eyes made her pause. He wasn't selling confidence. He was selling hope. And she hated that she needed it. "What's your name?" she asked. "Liam Hart. Any culinary training?" "Some. Years ago. Didn't finish." "Why not?" He hesitated. "Because life has different recipes for everyone. Mine required adjustments." She tapped a pen against her invoice pad. "Fine. One night. But if you ruin my stove or poison my regulars, I'll bury you under this tile floor and serve stew over your grave." He smiled again, wider this time. "Then I'd better make it memorable." The kitchen still smelled like disappointment from the night before. Elena watched from the pass-through window as Liam tied on a borrowed apron and opened the walk-in. He didn't ask questions. He just began. By noon, the prep counter was organized. The clutter that her line cooks had grumbled about for weeks was gone. Knives sharpened, herbs cleaned and wrapped. No ego, no declarations. Just rhythm, like someone remembering a language he hadn't spoken in years, but never truly forgot. "Where's your staff?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. Elena leaned against the doorframe. "Tuesdays, just me and Jen." The others left when the paychecks got thinner than the soup. He didn't comment. Instead, he picked up a small container of heavy cream, swirled it, set it down. Then he began dicing onions, clean, precise, as if each cut mattered. At 4 ordre p.m., she found him standing still, staring at the stovetop. "What are you making?" she asked. "Something that smells like home. For people who've forgotten what that is." Elena blinked. "You always talk in riddles." He gave a soft chuckle. "Only when I'm nervous." She didn't expect that. "You're nervous?" He looked up, eyes gentler than she'd noticed before. "You think I'm here for the money?" "No. I think you're here because something broke in you, and you're hoping food will fix it." He said nothing, but his silence felt like agreement. Dinner service began with 2 tables. One couple too old to cook, one man too tired to care. The usual suspects. Liam stepped into the kitchen like a man stepping onto a stage, not to perform, but to confess. The chowder was first. It wasn't fancy. No microgreens, no foam. But it was hot, thick, and smoky in a way that curled into your ribs. The older woman at table 2 took 1 spoonful, then stopped. Her husband reached for her hand, confused. She nodded slowly, tears forming without falling. I haven't tasted this since the winter of '65, she whispered. Harry made this when our son was born. Elena watched from behind the bar, frozen. The man at table 1 asked for a second bowl, then a third. I don't know what this is, he muttered, but it tastes like something I've been missing and didn't know it. Liam never stepped out from the kitchen. He only peeked around the pass-through once when the old couple clinked their spoons like a toast. Then he turned back to the pot, stirred it once, and began cleaning. Elena waited until the last dish was washed, the floor mopped. She found him by the back door, tying the tin box shut. You cheated, she said. He turned. How so? You didn't just make chowder. You made memory soup. That's not cooking. That's witchcraft. He smiled. Good, because memory's the only seasoning I've never run out of. She held out her hand. You're on for the rest of the week. Same deal, don't burn the place down. He shook her hand. His grip was strong, but warm. As he turned to leave, she called out Liam. He paused. What was the real reason you came in today? He looked at her for a long beat, then said, Because my daughter still believes food can heal the world. I wanted to believe it again, too. He disappeared into the falling dusk, leaving Elena alone with the silence he had somehow softened. And in the air, still lingering above the polished countertop, was the faint scent of smoked cream and second chances. The first thing Elena noticed wasn't the smell, it was the silence. The kitchen, once a chorus of clanging pans and half-shouted curses, now pulsed with quiet intention. Liam moved like a man who wasn't just cooking, but remembering. Every motion had weight. Every stir was a thought held gently in his hands. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, pretending to check her watch. You've got 2 tables. 1 couple, 1 guy who looks like he eats out of habit. Liam didn't glance up. That's 2 more people to feed than I had yesterday. Elena arched an eyebrow. You always this optimistic? No. Just realistic with a side of hopeful. She stayed longer than she meant to, watching him slice fold season. The broth simmered. The leeks sweated in butter. Then came the moment he reached for a small, unlabeled jar from the tin box on the prep counter. What's that? She asked. An old friend, he said, pinching a whisper of golden powder between his fingers. It doesn't change the flavor. Just reminds it where it came from. She frowned. You always talk like food's got a soul. He looked at her then, dead serious. Don't you? The chowder was plated with no flair, no dots, no spirals, no artifice. Just a steaming bowl, a chunk of crusty sourdough, and a drizzle of something that smelled like wood smoke and winter. Elena carried it to table 2 herself. The older woman squinted at the bowl. Is this? No name, Elena said, setting it down gently. Just something the chef thought might taste like home. The woman gave her husband a half-amused glance, then lifted the spoon. The first taste made her pause mid-air as if the room had tilted. She didn't cry, she didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any sob. Her husband reached across and touched her hand. What is it? Ruth. She smiled through watery eyes. He used to make this for me. When I was pregnant with Mark. Same smokiness. Same time. God, I thought I'd imagined that flavor. Elena turned away quickly, swallowing something tight in her chest. At table 1, the middle-aged man who always kept his headphones in had pulled them out. He scraped the bottom of the bowl and waved at her. What's in this? He asked. Elena shrugged. Hope, apparently. The man chuckled. Whatever it is, bottle it and sell it by the gallon. Back in the kitchen, Liam was wiping down the counter, humming under his breath, soft and low, like someone remembering a lullaby. You're not curious what they thought Elena asked from the doorway. I'm not cooking to impress them, he said. I'm cooking so they remember something worth keeping. She tilted her head. That sounds like something from a Hallmark movie. He paused. Maybe. But maybe Hallmark stole it from someone who knew better. Elena exhaled a laugh. So, what do you call that dish? Nostalgic chowder. He wiped his hands, leaned on the counter. I don't name my dishes. The person eating it gets to decide what it's called. That's kind of beautiful. He looked at her. Food should never be about ego. It should be about connection. You don't serve a memory on a plate and take credit for it. Later that night, when the lights were low and the dishwasher hummed softly, Elena found Liam seated at one of the booths sketching something on a napkin. Across from him sat a little girl, maybe 8, curly-haired and rosy-cheeked tongue peeking out as she colored with fierce concentration. Elena blinked. "You didn't say you had a kid." He glanced up. "You didn't ask." The girl looked up. "Hi, I'm Sophie." "Hi, Sophie. I'm Elena." "She's the owner, right?" Sophie whispered to Liam. "Yep." Sophie leaned across the table conspiratorially. "Your kitchen smells nicer than school." Elena smiled. "That's a pretty high compliment. She says that everywhere smells better than school," Liam said with a grin. Sophie held up her drawing a bowl of soup with smiley faces rising out of the steam. Above it she'd written in rainbow crayon, "The sad soup that smiles." Elena stared. "That's incredible. She draws every dish I make," Liam said. "Says it helps her remember how it made people feel." "She doesn't draw how it looks?" Elena asked. "Nope, just how it feels." Elena sat down across from Sophie. "Can I keep this?" Sophie beamed. "Only if you hang it on the wall." Liam looked surprised. "We don't usually. We will now," Elena said. "And I'll even get a frame." Sophie clapped. Elena watched Liam as he looked at his daughter. The pride in his face wasn't loud. It was quiet, worn in, like a coat that had been through every storm. "You're a good dad," she said almost without realizing it. He met her eyes. "I'm trying." She nodded. "I know the feeling." After Sophie went home with the neighbor who watched her during Liam's shifts, Elena lingered in the kitchen while Liam finished the dishes. "You ever work in a professional kitchen?" before she asked. "Briefly. Culinary school in Vermont. Dropped out when my wife got sick." Silence filled the space between them. "I'm sorry," she said finally. He nodded. "So was I." Elena hesitated. "You said something earlier, about food helping people remember." Liam looked up. "Yeah. What does this place remind you of?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "Of what it feels like to lose something slowly. And, maybe, what it feels like to start finding it again." Elena didn't sleep much that night. The restaurant was still losing money. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in months, she felt something she hadn't dared let herself feel. A small, flickering warmth. Not hope, exactly, but the hunger for it. And sometimes that's the first taste you need. By midday, the sunlight poured through the front windows in golden stripes, lighting up the tired leather booths and dust dancing in the air like forgotten memories. Elena stood behind the counter with her third cup of coffee watching the door, though she would never admit she was waiting for them. Then it opened. Sophie burst in first, backpack swinging curls, bouncing cheeks flushed with the kind of excitement only 8-year-olds carried. Liam followed a step behind, carrying a paper bag in one hand and Sophie's art folder in the other. She insisted, he said with a shrug, holding out the folder. "I can see that," Elena said, smiling, as Sophie hopped onto a stool and spread out her drawings like a vendor at a street fair. "I brought more food feelings," Sophie announced proudly. "Want to see always." The first drawing was of the chowder from the night before, but this time it had a halo. She pointed to it. "I call this one Heaven Soup for people who forgot they deserved it." Elena blinked. "That's quite a title." "She gets that from her mom," Liam said softly. Sophie held up another. "This is a bowl of noodles, but they're hugging." Elena laughed. "Noodles that hug. Sometimes people need dinner to do what people won't," Sophie said matter of fact. That one sentence stayed with Elena longer than it should have. By 3:00 p.m., the place had a few tables filled, not many, but more than most Tuesdays. A group of nurses from the clinic came in, followed by a mailman Elena hadn't seen in weeks. They didn't order from the old laminated menu. Instead, they asked, "Can we have whatever that new guy's cooking?" In the kitchen, Liam worked like a man conducting an orchestra of warmth. No chaos, no shouting. Just steam and rhythm and quiet purpose. Elena leaned against the doorframe. They're asking for whatever he's cooking. Not a name, not a number. Just whatever. He didn't stop stirring. Because when people are hurting, they don't need options. They need comfort. She tilted her head. You ever think about writing a book, Philosophy of Soup, or something? Liam smirked. I did once. Then life gave me something better to write on. What's that? He looked over at Sophie, who was at her table drawing with her tongue sticking out again. Her. That evening, as the last table left, Sophie approached Elena holding a new drawing carefully in both hands. It was a portrait of Elena, though stylized. Her hair was made of flames and her eyes were made of spoons. Elena raised an eyebrow. I look dangerous. Sophie beamed. You are, but the good kind, like chili flakes and chocolate. Elena laughed a full surprised laugh she hadn't heard from herself in months. You ever think about selling these? She asked. Nope, Sophie said. They're not for selling. They're for remembering. Elena's voice softened. What are you trying to remember with this one? Sophie looked up at her. What it feels like when someone who's been alone too long finally lets somebody stay. Elena couldn't speak for a moment. She looked at Liam. He hadn't moved, but she knew he'd heard. He always heard. Later, after Sophie had gone home, Elena and Liam sat at the front booth. The lights were low, the coffee was warm, and outside snowflakes had begun to fall, just a few, like a whisper from winter. Liam rubbed his hands together. Feels like a soup night. You think every night is a soup night. That's because every night is. They sat in silence for a while, sipping slowly. Then Elena said, You know, she's incredible. Sophie. She is. She's also watching us more than you realize. I know. Elena turned her cup slowly in her hands. What happened to her mom? You don't have to tell me. Liam stared at the steam rising from his mug. Cancer. Fast. Unfair. You know the type. Elena nodded, eyes down. I do. He looked at her. You lost someone too. Yeah. They didn't say anything else for a long time. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with understanding, like a quilt sewn from pain and resilience. Then Liam added, When Sophie draws food, she's not drawing what it looks like. She's drawing what it saved. Elena met his eyes. And what about you, Liam? What are you still trying to save? He hesitated. Myself, he said finally. And maybe what's left of the version of me she remembers. The next morning, someone taped Sophie's Sad Soup That Smiles drawing to the front window. By noon, 3 different strangers came in asking for it by name. By evening, the Gilded Spoon had 5 tables full, and a new sign hung near the hostess stand, Memory Menu Today's Special, Sad Soup That Smiles. Elena didn't know if they were saving the restaurant, but something was happening, something warm, something that smelled like second chances. And perhaps that was enough to keep going one more night. You're ruining the rhythm of the place. The accusation sliced through the steam like a knife through meringue. Liam looked up from his cutting board. Standing across the prep table was Trevor, the sous chef Elena had rehired the day before to help with the sudden uptick in orders. Tall, tattooed, with a clean apron and sharp tongue, Trevor had been with the Gilded Spoon before the decline, and he didn't like how things had changed without him. I'm sorry, Liam asked, voice calm. Trevor wiped his hands with a little too much force. No system, no consistency. You don't write recipes. You just feel your way through service. That might fly in someone's home kitchen, but not here. Liam placed his knife down deliberately. And yet, the guests are smiling. Trevor scoffed. So are toddlers with ketchup on toast. Doesn't mean it belongs on a menu. In the corner, Elena heard it all. She let them keep talking until she didn't. That's enough, she said, stepping into the kitchen. Both men turned. Elena looked at Trevor first. I appreciate your experience, but this kitchen isn't the same place it was last month. If you want a formula, there's a chain steakhouse on Route 8 hiring." Trevor opened his mouth, closed it again. Then she turned to Liam. "And you? You could meet the team halfway. Write a prep list. Communicate more. You can't cook in riddles and expect everyone to keep up." Liam nodded. "Fair." Trevor muttered, "Didn't even go to culinary school." Liam's response was soft but firm. "I didn't finish school. I was too busy learning how to cook for someone who couldn't keep food down without crying." Trevor didn't reply. He didn't have to. The words had landed. That night's service was tense. Orders came faster than any night before. Word about the memory menu had spread. Locals whispered about the sad soup, the hugging noodles, the heaven chowder. People didn't just eat, they came to feel something. But pressure revealed cracks. The kitchen grew loud. Bowls clattered. Trevor snapped at the new server, Jen. Jen nearly dropped a tray. Sophie, who was coloring quietly at the side table, flinched. Elena caught it all. At 7:45, a regular customer, a widow who'd been coming for 20 years, called Elena over. "What's happening back there?" she asked gently. Elena gave her best restaurant smile. "Growing pains." The woman nodded, eyes kind. "Don't lose what made this place feel like home last week." It was a warning disguised as a compliment. Elena returned to the kitchen, her jaw tight. Later, after the last guest had left and the lights were dimmed, Elena called Liam outside. They stood beneath the faded wooden sign that still read "The Gilded Spoon," though snow had dusted over the gold paint. "You okay?" she asked. Liam sighed. "It's harder to translate feelings into a recipe than I thought. I warned you about Trevor. He's not wrong. Kitchens need rhythm. I just dance to a different beat." She smiled at that. "You're a jazz guy in a classical kitchen." He chuckled. "Exactly." Elena looked at him for a moment. "What happens when the jazz stops?" He met her gaze. "Then I hum, I stir, I improvise, whatever it takes to make sure the table isn't empty." She didn't say anything, just nodded slowly. Then quietly she said, "You know what scares me, Liam?" "What?" "That we're building something beautiful. On ashes." Liam looked up at the sign above them. "Sometimes that's where the richest soil is." Inside, Sophie had fallen asleep on a Booth crayon still in her hand. Elena covered her with a clean apron folded like a blanket. "She's good at seeing what people feel." Elena whispered. "She sees what they don't say." "Out loud," Liam replied. "Like her father." He turned to her. "You think I'm like that?" She nodded. "You don't cook with your hands. You cook with your heart. That's rare. It's also exhausting." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it's the only way I know." There was a pause. Then she asked almost too gently, "What would happen if you let someone cook for you?" Liam didn't answer. The next morning, Trevor didn't show up for work. He left a note taped to the fridge. "I don't belong in this kind of kitchen. Best of luck. P.S. The soup really is that good." Liam read it once, then folded it and placed it into his tin box. Elena noticed. "You keep everything in there." "Only what reminds me that I'm still trying." That afternoon, Sophie taped a new drawing to the front window. It showed two chefs, one made of fire, one of water, stirring a single pot together. Above it, the title in her rainbow scrawl, "The Soup That Didn't Need to Win, Just to Heal." A customer paused outside, smiling, then walked in and said, "I'll have what they're having." And just like that, despite the tension, despite the doubts, despite the cracks in the rhythm, the Gilded Spoon breathed again. The storm outside wasn't fierce, just steady. Rain tapped at the windows in soft rhythms like someone too shy to knock. Inside, the lights were low and warm. The dinner rush had passed, and the scent of roasted fennel and lemon lingered in the quiet hum of a kitchen at rest. Elena wiped the counter for the third time, not because it was dirty, but because she needed something to do with her hands. Liam was in the back booth cleaning the same spoon over and over with a bar towel. Beside him, his tin box sat open. She'd seen that box a dozen times but never asked. Tonight she would. "You always polish spoons when you're thinking?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Liam smiled. "Only when I'm trying not to think." "What are you trying not to think about tonight?" He hesitated, then nudged the tin box toward her. She looked down. Inside there were no recipes, no laminated secrets, just scraps, some handwritten, some scribbled by a child, a ribbon, a pressed flower, a small button, and at the very bottom a folded sheet of paper, edges frayed from handling. "Can I?" she asked softly. He nodded. She lifted the paper carefully. It was a list, no title, no instructions, just numbered lines. 1. Applesauce with cinnamon, when she had a fever. 2. Toast triangles, after chemo, number 2. 3. Broth with ginger, the night she cried in the hallway. 4. Mashed potatoes, extra butter, the day the doctor said months. 5. Orange slices, always peeled for her. 6. Grilled cheese, the day Sophie laughed again, Elena's breath caught. Each item on the list was a moment. Not a recipe, but a record of love. She looked up, tears burning. "Is this?" Liam nodded. 27 meals I made for my wife during her last 100 days. He paused, then added, "And the one I made for Sophie when she finally smiled again." Elena couldn't speak. He said it so plainly as if he were telling her how many eggs were in the fridge. But his eyes told a different story. A man who had memorized the weight of loss and still chose to feed others anyway. After a long silence, she whispered, "Why do you keep the list?" "To remind me why I cook," he said. "It's not about saving restaurants. It's about showing up when words don't work." She swallowed hard. "That's not cooking, Liam. That's ministry." He laughed quietly. "Don't let the apron fool you. I'm not a saint." "No," she said gently. "But you're exactly what this place needed." They sat for a while, listening to the rain. Then Liam asked, "What about you? Why did you stay after your husband passed?" Elena leaned back, eyes distant. He always dreamed of this place. Said someday the Gilded Spoon would be where strangers felt less lonely. When he died, I thought keeping it open would keep him close. But it didn't. She shook her head. It became something else. Cold. Empty. A shrine, not a sanctuary. He studied her. Maybe it needed new hands. She looked at him then, down at his list again. "No," she said. "Maybe it needed a new heart." Later that evening, Sophie arrived, dripping from the rain but grinning as if the weather had been made just for her. "I brought something," she announced, waving a fresh drawing like a victory flag. She laid it flat on the counter and smoothed it carefully. It was a picture of a giant soup pot floating in the clouds, surrounded by stars. Inside the pot were tiny windows, and in each window was a different person, smiling: a nurse, a mechanic, a mother, a child. Across the bottom, in bold rainbow crayon, it read, "The soup that collected lost pieces." Elena bent down. "What's this one about, sweetheart?" Sophie tapped the paper. "It's about how people carry pieces of their sadness. But when they eat something made with love, the soup holds it for them just for a little while, so they can breathe again." Liam looked away, eyes glistening. Elena blinked hard. "That's beautiful." Sophie beamed. "Want to hang it up? I'll put it right next to your last one," Elena said, reaching for tape. Then Sophie added quietly, "This one's for Mom." Liam froze, just for a beat, then walked over and kissed the top of her head. "Mine too," he said. That night, Elena stood alone in the front of the restaurant after Liam and Sophie left. The drawings fluttered in the window like prayer flags. The tables were still. The rain had softened to a hush. She stepped outside and looked up at the old sign. The Gilded Spoon. So elegant, so rigid, so not them anymore. Then, as if moved by instinct, she walked back in, pulled a pad from the drawer, and began to write. A name. Not polished, not pretentious, but warm, true, heart and hearth. And suddenly she didn't feel so alone in the building anymore. She felt him, her late husband, not as a shadow but as a blessing. As if he'd whispered, "It's okay to let go of the dream, if what comes next is more alive." And tomorrow she would tell Liam, because the name wasn't just a change, it was a promise. The dining room was full, not just full alive, the kind of warmth that made coats unnecessary and small talk unnecessary. Glasses clinked, forks tapped, and laughter rose like steam. Even the walls, once quiet witnesses to decline, now buzzed with stories. Liam stood at the pass window wiping his hands on a towel. "Full house on a Tuesday," he murmured half in disbelief. Elena stood beside him, arms crossed, face unreadable. "They're not here for me," she said. He glanced at her. "No, they're here for the feeling you made possible." She didn't answer, just kept watching the tables like a conductor listening to her orchestra. Table 4 had ordered the soup that collected lost pieces. A mother and her teenage son. They didn't speak much until the first spoonful. Then something shifted. The mother leaned forward. The boy set down his phone. They talked. Really talked. At table 7, a retired couple split the hugging noodles. The man dabbed his wife's chin with a napkin and said, "Still messy after all these years." Elena smiled to herself. The memory menu was working, but success like soup could boil over without warning. At 7:23 p.m., a man in a sleek navy blazer walked through the door. Elena recognized him instantly. Colin Price, food critic for Fork and Flame, a notoriously unforgiving culinary blog with a readership that could make or destroy a small-town restaurant overnight. He didn't wait for a hostess. Just walked in, sat at the corner table, pulled out a leather notebook, and scanned the room like a predator in a petting zoo. Elena's heart dropped. Liam noticed. "You okay?" "Don't panic," she said tightly. "Why would I panic because the man at table 9 can reduce a restaurant to ashes with a single paragraph?" Liam frowned. Is he here to eat? Or to judge? With Colin Price, they're the same thing. In the kitchen, tension thickened. Jen whispered, "Oh, God," as she realized who had just ordered. Even the line cooks moved differently, measured, unsure. Liam, however, seemed calm. "What did he order?" Elena asked, peeking at the ticket. Liam raised an eyebrow. He said, and I quote, "Give me whatever you think will shut me up." Elena blinked. That's a trap. I know Liam said reaching for the sauté pan. 20 minutes later, the plate arrived, a seared pork loin glazed with a citrus thyme reduction resting atop root vegetable hash paired with a side of pickled cabbage and roasted apple slaw. Simple, soulful, and absolutely not trendy. Colin Price lifted his fork, took one bite, then another, and then. He smirked, not a smile. A smirk, the kind that meant interesting, but not impressive. He scribbled something in his notebook. Then he stood, adjusted his jacket, and left without a word. Elena stared after him, jaw tight. "He didn't even finish it," Jen whispered. Liam stayed quiet, wiping his station clean. Elena followed him into the back hallway. "That was good. That was really good." He shrugged. "Good doesn't always photograph well. Do you care what he writes?" He met her eyes. "I care if it breaks what we're building here. I don't care if it bruises my ego." She let out a breath. "What if it does break us? Then we rebuild. That's what kitchens do." Elena stared at him. "You say that like you've rebuilt everything before." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Only the things worth rebuilding. 2 days later, the review dropped. It was brutal. The Gilded Spoon, now posing as a folksy emotional retreat, serves warm flavors and cold cliches. The food is tender, but conceptually confused. It's more therapy session than meal. And unless you're nursing heartbreak, don't expect to leave with more than nostalgia and an overpriced bill. The final line stung the most. There's a difference between comfort food and sentimental slop. The Gilded Spoon hasn't figured it out. The blog exploded with shares. Comments ranged from curious to cruel. Is this place a soup kitchen or a sob story I came for dinner, not group therapy? Healing is cute until it costs $24 a plate. Elena sat at her desk staring at the screen. Liam walked in holding coffee. She didn't speak, just turned the laptop toward him. He read it, expression steady, then closed the laptop gently. He's not wrong. What Liam sat down. We're not traditional. We're not modern. We're not five-star plating or dollar menu safe. We're something else. That confuses people, especially critics. But he leaned forward. Elena, we're not feeding critics. We're feeding grief. We're feeding celebration. We're feeding forgiveness and memory and regret. We're feeding the human parts of people. That doesn't come with stars. She blinked fast. But if it kills our momentum, then we keep doing what we've been doing, one table at a time. He paused. Unless you're ready to go back to truffle foam and risotto towers. Elena exhaled a dry laugh. I hate truffle foam. Me too. That night someone called the restaurant. Elena answered. The woman on the line had read the review. She'd also lost her husband the year before. He used to make stew on Wednesdays, the woman said, voice trembling. It was awful. But I loved it. Your memory menu. I need it. I need to remember something tonight. Elena didn't hesitate. Come in. We'll have a seat waiting. When she hung up, Liam was leaning against the doorway. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Later, as they locked up, Liam stood beneath the sign. The Gilded Spoon. I think it's time, Elena said. For what? For the name to match the soul. He looked at her. You picked one. She nodded. Heart and hearth. He smiled, a full, unguarded smile. Then let's build the fire. And somewhere inside them both something melted. Not all at once, but enough to begin. It was quiet after the last table left. Not the kind of silence that felt empty, but the kind that hummed with something unsaid. A hush between notes. A breath before the next line. Elena stood at the back counter, fingers trailing over the new sign that had just gone up that morning, Heart and Hearth. Hand-carved, sanded, smooth. Painted in warm earth tones that made it feel less like a business and more like a memory you could walk into. The old sign, the Gilded Spoon, now leaned in the back pantry wrapped in an old linen cloth. She hadn't thrown it away, but she hadn't looked at it either. Liam was still in the kitchen long after closing. Sophie had gone home with the neighbor, too tired to stay for cleanup. But Liam stayed. He always stayed. Tonight, though, he wasn't scrubbing or reorganizing or humming softly to himself. He was cooking. One pot, one flame, one spoon. Elena watched from the doorway, arms folded, leaning against the frame like she wasn't ready to step fully into whatever this was. You're off the clock, she said. Liam didn't look up. Some clocks run on different time. She smiled. That's not an answer. He stirred. The smell wafting from the pot was strange, familiar. Strange because it was familiar, sweet, earthy, a little tang, and something deeper, like soil after rain, like fall air through an open window. She stepped closer. What is that? He glanced at her. You told me once your husband made soup. Bad soup. She froze. He did. You said it was overly sweet, too thick, and always had this weird spice that didn't belong. Elena's voice went flat. Clove. He used clove in everything. Liam chuckled. That's the one. She folded her arms tighter. Why are you making that? He turned the heat low, because sometimes remembering the imperfect things is the only way we forgive ourselves for letting them go. Elena sat down at the prep table, watched him in silence. After a moment, she said softly, he used to make it on Sundays, called it his Sunday soul stew. Always wore that stupid apron with the cartoon pig. Always burned the onions. She laughed, quiet and tired. But he never let me in the kitchen. Said the soup was his job. Said, "This is how I love you when I don't know what else to do." Liam ladled a bowl, placed it in front of her. She stared at it, steam rising like a ghost of a decade past. "You want me to eat this?" she asked. "No," he said gently. "I want you to let yourself feel what you've been afraid to remember." Elena's hand trembled as she lifted the spoon. One taste, then stillness. Not from disappointment, not from revulsion, but from recognition. It wasn't his soup. Not exactly. It was better, softer, like someone had edited the pain but kept the handwriting. Her voice cracked. "How did you get it so close? I asked the butcher who used to deliver to him. Asked the neighbor who always complained about the smell. Asked Sophie what your face looked like when you told the story." She blinked. "You watched me." He nodded. "I've been watching since day one. Watching you try to keep this place running while pretending the world didn't shift under your feet." She looked down. "I didn't make this to impress you," he said. "I made this to return something that was stolen from you by time." Tears fell without her permission. She didn't wipe them. Then she laughed through it. "It's still a terrible soup." He smiled. "But it knows your heart." They sat in silence. Two people and one bowl between them sharing more than food. Then Elena whispered, "You know what scares me? What that this feels like more than food. Like I'm sitting at the edge of something I'm not sure I can survive if I fall into it." Liam looked at her eyes soft. "You're not falling. You're thawing." She turned to him. "And you? What are you still carrying?" He paused, then said quietly, "I spent so long cooking for grief that I forgot how to cook for joy. Forgot that food wasn't just a way to hold on, but sometimes a way to let go." Elena looked at him, eyes glassy but steady. "So, what now?" He leaned back. "Tomorrow we serve whatever's left in the fridge, because that's how life works." She laughed again. "God, you're exhausting." And yet he smiled. "You haven't fired me." At the front of the house, Sophie's drawing from yesterday still hung on the window, the soup that collected lost pieces. Elena rose, walked to it, and carefully took it down. She turned it over. On the back, Sophie had scribbled in pencil, almost like a secret. "Sometimes people don't need to be fixed. They just need to be fed gently until they remember they're already whole." Elena pressed the paper to her chest. A breath caught in her throat. She turned to Liam. "You didn't just make a soup." He looked up. "No, you made." Forgiveness tastes like home. That night, long after the lights dimmed and the chairs were upturned, Elena sat alone in the front booth bowl, empty memories full. Some griefs never truly leave. But for the first time in years, she wasn't eating alone, and that made all the difference. It was the first afternoon the sun had broken through in days. Light streamed across the newly painted sign above the door, Heart and Hearth, as if it had been waiting all winter for this moment. Inside, the walls glowed a little warmer. The air felt a little softer. And for the first time since her husband passed, Elena felt like she wasn't just keeping something alive. She was letting something live. Sophie was seated at the same corner booth, her legs swinging as she sketched in thick strokes of crayon. She didn't even look up as Liam slid a fresh mug of hot cocoa beside her. "Extra marshmallows," he said. Sophie nodded, focused. "Thanks, Chef Dad." Elena chuckled as she passed. "You getting promoted?" Liam shrugged. "I take what I can get." Sophie raised her hand without looking up. "You want to see it?" "What is it this time?" Elena asked, sitting across from her. Sophie turned the page, slowly revealing a new drawing. This one was different. Less whimsical, more anchored. A picture of the restaurant from the outside, but the windows were glowing. Inside, little cartoon people laughed, hugged, held hands over soup. Above it, in blocky, earnest letters, Heart and Hearth, where broken things get warm again. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Sophie, this is beautiful. Sophie shrugged, sipping her cocoa. I just draw what I feel. You're 8, Elena whispered. How do you feel things this deeply? Sophie looked at her wide-eyed. Because some grown-ups forget. Liam raised his eyebrows. She gets that from her mother. By mid-afternoon, the restaurant buzzed with energy. Jen and 2 new part-time servers were rearranging the front shelves to make room for framed copies of Sophie's drawings. Liam prepped in the kitchen, calm, focused hands steady. Today was the soft launch of the new menu. Not fancy, not complex, just real. The memory menu. Each item came with a short story, a quote, a name. The sad soup that smiles was now officially listed as grief chowder, for the days when your chest is too heavy to talk. The hugging noodles came with the note inspired by a daughter who believed pasta should hold you together. Customers walked in, browsed the menu, and fell quiet, not awkward, quiet, but the kind that comes before something meaningful. At 4:00 p.m., a woman in her 60s came in. She carried nothing but her purse and a folded newspaper clipping. Elena greeted her. Welcome to Heart and Hearth. The woman hesitated. This used to be the Gilded Spoon, didn't it? Yes, same bones, new soul. The woman nodded, eyes misting. I came here 30 years ago on my honeymoon. We had duck confit and argued about names for our first baby. He passed last year. I haven't eaten out since. Elena swallowed. Would you like to sit by the window? The woman clutched the clipping. I read that review, the bad one. But then I saw your reply. Elena blinked. Reply. The woman unfolded a printed blog comment. At the bottom of Colin Price's scathing review, someone had written, If you want perfect presentation, go somewhere else. If you want to be reminded why food matters, why we gather, why we stay, why we remember, come to Heart and Hearth. They don't serve meals. They serve moments. It had no name. Elena smiled faintly. That sounds like something someone I work with would say. The woman took a seat by the window. Tell him thank you. I came because I needed to taste my life again. In the kitchen, Liam was plating roasted chicken with rosemary juice and root vegetables. Nothing fancy, just honest food cooked, slowly served warm. Elena stepped in and leaned against the doorframe. You posted that comment, didn't you? Liam didn't look up. What gave me away? You used the word moments. No one under 40 uses that unironically. He grinned, guilty. She watched him work. People are showing up, Liam. They're not here for discounts or hype. They're here because we're giving them something they didn't know they'd lost. He nodded. And you're the one who made space for it. No, she said, voice soft. You reminded me how. That evening, the team gathered in the back for a family meal, something Liam had insisted on. Everyone brought something. Jen baked biscuits. The dishwasher made deviled eggs with too much paprika. Sophie brought PB&J cut into stars. Liam served stew. They sat around the prep table, mismatched chairs, chipped mugs. Elena raised her glass. To what we're building. Liam added, to the stories we serve. Sophie piped up to warm things. They clinked glasses, mugs, whatever was in hand. Liam looked around the table, then said, You know, it's not just food that feeds people. It's being seen. That's the ingredient most places forget. Elena nodded, meeting his eyes. Well then, we'll never run out. That night, before they locked up, Elena stood at the new hostess stand, running her fingers along the menu. A note had been scribbled on a sticky tab stuck to the back. Sophie's handwriting. Tonight, someone told me their soup tasted like the day they fell in love. I think we're doing it right. Elena closed her eyes and smiled. Yes, they were. It was the kind of night where the air outside felt heavy, like it carried more than weather. Inside, Heart and Hearth was humming. Not loud, not raucous, but alive in that unmistakable way a place feels when the people inside it are trying to heal something invisible. Elena was refilling salt shakers when she saw him. He stood just inside the door, mid-30s, dark jacket, hesitant eyes. Hands shoved deep in his pockets like they were trying to hold something in. She walked over. First time the man nodded. Heard the food. Makes you remember things. She smiled softly. Sometimes. What are you hoping to remember? He swallowed. Honestly, I'm hoping to forget. She tilted her head. What would you like to order? He paused, then said almost ashamed, I don't care what it is. Just something that feels like forgiveness. Liam was already behind the pass window when Elena slipped into the kitchen. He looked up, read her face. Who is he? Liam asked. Don't know. Just came in. Said he needs a dish that tastes like forgiveness. Liam's hands went still. Elena studied him. You okay? He nodded, then shook his head. You ever make something for someone and hope it heals a part of you too? She didn't answer, just stepped closer. What are you thinking? She asked gently. He exhaled. There's a recipe I haven't touched since my wife's funeral. It's not on any menu, not even in my tin box. She blinked. Why? He looked down. Because it's the last thing she asked me to make for her. Elena's voice softened. And you did. He nodded. But I never tasted it. I couldn't. Not after. He turned to the stove. Maybe tonight it's time. 30 minutes later, the man sat at a table by the window. Elena placed the dish in front of him without a word. It was simple. A bowl of butternut squash risotto. Slow stirred, finished with browned sage butter, shaved parmesan, and a drizzle of something citrusy, something unexpected. The man stared at it. Then took one bite, and everything in him broke. Not loudly, not publicly, just a quiet breath that turned into a sob he tried to swallow. Elena gave him space. When he finished, he looked up, eyes glassy. He whispered, It tastes like someone's telling me I don't have to hate myself anymore. In the kitchen, Liam stood still staring at the empty saucepan. Elena joined him. Was that hers? She asked. He nodded. It was her favorite. Said it tasted like autumn holding her hand. She had a way with words. So does Sophie, he said quietly. She just never knew how much came from her mother. Elena placed a hand on his arm. You okay? He didn't speak for a moment, then said, I thought by not cooking that dish again I was honoring her. But maybe I was just avoiding the part of her that still lives in me. Later, Sophie arrived holding a new drawing. It's for today, she announced. The man by the window. I could tell. She handed it to Elena first. The drawing showed a storm cloud above a person's head raining down. But the person was holding a spoon, and every time they took a bite from a bowl, the storm shrank. At the bottom, in bright pink letters, the dish that told him he was still worth loving. Elena touched her heart. Sophie? The little girl shrugged. Sometimes people think they need fixing, but really they just need someone to believe they're still good. Liam swallowed, hard. He crouched beside her. Soph, that dish tonight, that was from your mom. Sophie looked at him serious. I know, you do. I remember the smell. And how you wouldn't talk for 2 days after. Liam blinked. I thought you forgot. She shook her head. No, Daddy. I just waited for you to be ready to remember. That night, as the last guests left and the lights dimmed, Elena sat with Liam on the back step, mugs of tea in hand. Silence between them again, but not empty. Just full of everything that didn't need to be said aloud. You gave him what he needed tonight, she said. Liam nodded. Funny how you can give something away and somehow end up with more. She looked over. What do you need, Liam? He hesitated, then said quietly, To believe that loving someone new doesn't mean I'm letting go of the one I lost. Elena didn't flinch, didn't look away. She simply whispered, Then maybe we both need to stop living like memory is the only way to keep someone alive. He turned to her, met her eyes. Are we still talking about food? He asked. She smiled. We never were. Inside, Sophie had left her drawing taped to the fridge with a note underneath in her blocky handwriting. Don't be afraid to serve the dishes that hurt. Sometimes they heal more than the sweet ones. Liam stared at it, and for the first time in years the past didn't feel like a weight. It felt like seasoning, something that gave the present its flavor without drowning it. The sky over Waterfield burned gold as the town's lanterns flickered to life one by one. Music drifted from the bandstand near the park. Kids raced between hay bales and booths. Laughter rippled like wind through trees. The annual Harvest Light Festival was in full bloom, simple homespun, and deeply sacred to everyone who called this place home. But this year, something had changed. At the heart of Main Street stood a tent unlike any other. No signs, no pricing, just a hand-lettered chalkboard that read, Heart and Hearth. Tonight we cook for everyone. No reservations, no menu, no bill, just food and love. Elena stood beside the long folding tables adjusting the linens. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the size of what they were doing. Tonight wasn't about survival. It wasn't about reputation. It was about giving. Liam stepped up beside her, wiping his hands on his apron. We ready? She turned to him. I don't know. Does anyone ever feel ready to feed a whole town? He smirked. Good point. But lucky for you. He held up a ladle like a sword. I've fought bigger battles with less. She laughed, but her eyes shimmered. This feels like something bigger than us. It is, he said softly. That's why we do it together. The food started rolling out just as the sun dipped low. Jen carried trays of hugging noodles that vanished in minutes. A local teenager who just started training with Liam served roasted squash tartines topped with rosemary and sea salt, his own twist. Even the town's gruffest mechanic, known more for his temper than taste, volunteered to slice bread for soup. And at the center of it all, like a conductor behind the curtain, was Sophie. Hair tied in two messy buns, apron streaked with chocolate and beet juice, she stood on a step stool and directed plating like a general. Nope, that one needs more green. The soup needs to smile. Liam leaned over and whispered to Elena. One day she's going to run the place. Elena smiled. She already is. At 7:45 p.m., something happened. The mayor, grizzled, skeptical, and allergic to anything that felt too emotional, approached Liam with a bowl of soup in hand. He sat down, ate slowly, then asked for seconds. When Liam brought it over, the mayor looked up and said, Don't know what you put in this, but it tastes like my wife's laugh. Liam didn't reply, just sat beside him for a minute quiet. Sometimes that was the only response needed. Elena stood on a crate at 8:00 p.m. spoon, tapping her water glass for attention. Hi, she said, voice wavering at first, then steadying. For those of you who don't know, Heart and Hearth used to be the Gilded Spoon. For a while it was just a building with too many memories and not enough customers. I almost let it die. A hush spread across the festival. But then, something changed. Or rather, someone changed it. She turned toward Liam. This man came in with no resume, no fame, just a daughter who draws what food feels like, and a heart that knows how to feed things no one else sees. People turned to Liam. He looked down hands in pockets, and tonight, Elena continued, we cook not for stars or tips, but for you, for the widows, the single dads, the nurses, the farmers, the forgotten, the tired, the ones holding it all together, and the ones who just need a bowl of soup to feel human again. Her voice caught. But most of all, thank you for reminding us why this matters. The crowd clapped. Not loud, not raucous, but long. The kind of applause that says, we see you, and we're grateful. Later that night, after the crowd had thinned and the last cups of cider were served, Elena found Liam standing alone behind the tent. He was staring up at the star's arms, folded face unreadable. She stepped beside him. Penny for your thoughts, he smiled. Just thinking how strange it is. I've cooked for years. but tonight felt like the first time I truly fed someone." She nodded. "Yeah, I felt it too." He turned to her. "You know, I used to think I had to carry grief in silence, that if I let go of the weight, I'd forget the love." Elena swallowed, and now he looked at her eyes, shining. "Now I know love doesn't disappear when the grief softens. It just makes more room." They stood in silence again, not uncomfortable, just full of the kind of quiet that comes when words would only get in the way. Then Liam said, "You never told me what your favorite dish is." Elena blinked. "What every customer has one. Every person has one. Even the ones who don't know it yet." She thought for a moment, then said, "There's this dish my grandmother used to make, braised chicken with fennel and oranges. I haven't had it in years." He smiled. Challenge accepted. "Think you can get it right? I won't know until I see your face when you taste it." That night, as they finished cleaning and packing, Sophie left one final drawing at the pass window. It showed the festival crowd, tiny smiling figures all holding glowing bowls. Above them, two people stood side by side in front of a big, open fire. Above them, in bright, uneven handwriting, the night they cooked for the whole town and forgot to be lonely. Elena stared at it heart full. Liam leaned in. "I think she's writing the real story." Elena nodded, and somewhere deep inside her, a door she didn't know was closed had finally opened. The snow had just begun to fall again. Not the heavy kind that silences everything, but soft, like a memory brushing past your cheek. The street outside was quiet. Just enough bustle to remind you that life moved on, but not so much that it rushed. Inside Heart and Hearth, the windows glowed gold. You could hear laughter, clinking mugs, the shuffle of boots, and above it all the unmistakable hum of a place that had become more than a restaurant. It was a second living room for a town that had once forgotten how to sit still together. Elena stood near the front watching it all. The tables were full. The walls were covered in framed sketches, Sophie's drawings now with little story captions handwritten beneath each one. There was the dish that helped her say goodbye, the meal that made a widow dance again, the sandwich that saved Tuesday, the bowl that said, "I'm sorry," without words. And in the center of it all, just above the fireplace, hung the first drawing ever made, the sad soup that smiles. Elena stared at it, her heart soft. She didn't think of it as decoration. She thought of it as scripture. In the kitchen, Liam was showing a teenage trainee how to poach eggs without fear. His sleeves were rolled hands, confident voice, calm. He moved like a man who knew where he was supposed to be, not because the world told him so, but because his own heart finally believed it. Sophie popped in older now, not by years, but by the quiet wisdom of someone who'd seen what love could do when it refused to quit. She waved a crumpled paper in Liam's direction. "Another one," he asked. She nodded. "A lady came in today. Sat alone. Said her husband used to bring her here before he passed. She ordered the soup, cried through the whole bowl, and then gave me this." He took the paper gently, read it aloud. "Thank you for remembering what the world forgets. That food like love doesn't need to be loud, just real." He looked at Sophie. "You keep collecting pieces of people like this, you're going to need a second gallery." She grinned. "Maybe we'll build one." Liam ruffled her hair. "Or maybe you'll run this place someday." Sophie tilted her head. "What about you?" He paused, then smiled. "I think I'm finally ready to share the kitchen." Later that night, after the rush, after the lights dimmed and only regulars remained sipping cocoa and warmth, Elena pulled a folded napkin from her apron pocket. She handed it to Liam quietly. He opened it. Inside was a small stitched heart, familiar. The same embroidered design from the kitchen towel he'd brought on his first day. But this one was new. Underneath it, in fine script, was written, "Feed with love, and stay." Liam looked up, eyes full. "You kept the towel," she said softly, "but I made you a new one." He swallowed. "What does this mean?" "It means—" She took a breath. "You don't have to leave when the kitchen gets quiet. You don't have to cook alone. or grieve alone, or raise Sophie alone. If you want to stay—" He didn't let her finish. He just reached across the counter and took her hand. And squeezed. Not tight, just sure. "I've been staying," he said. "Tonight I'm just finally letting myself believe it." They walked together through the empty dining room lights, soft, the fireplace crackling gently. Sophie was curled on one of the benches, sketchbook in hand, half asleep. A new drawing peeked from under her arm. Elena carefully pulled it out and held it to the light. It was a golden table, long and wide, with dozens of people seated at it. No one looked the same. Some young, some old, some laughing, some crying. But all of them were holding spoons. At the center of the table were 3 figures: a man, a woman, and a little girl with wild curls. Above it, in Sophie's familiar scrawl, the table where no one was left out. Elena felt her throat tighten. Liam stepped beside her. "I think she drew us," he whispered. She nodded, voice low. "I think she drew who we became." Outside, snow drifted across the sidewalk like feathers. Inside, warmth pressed against the glass, defying winter. And in the back above the pass window, someone had chalked a new message onto the old slate board. "You don't need reservations to be fed. You just need to walk in hungry for food, for healing, or for hope. We'll take care of the rest." Elena smiled. Liam turned off the last light, and together, hand in hand, they stepped out into the quiet night, not to leave the restaurant behind, but to carry it with them everywhere they went. End of story. And maybe the beginning of something even greater. If this story touched your heart even just a little, take a moment, breathe it in, because sometimes the most powerful ingredients aren't in the recipe. They're in the love we pass on one plate, one person, one act of kindness at a time. We'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you listening from? Drop your city or town or just a hello in the comments. We read every single one. If stories like this move you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're building a home for hearts like yours, where stories heal, connect, and remind us we're never truly alone. So, stay with us. More is coming. And, from all of us here, thank you for listening. Your time, your presence, your heart. It means more than words can say. Until the next story, stay warm, stay kind, and never stop believing in the quiet miracles around you.